Listen, the number one reason that you're not confident is simply because you have low standards as far as confidence goes. You think subconsciously or consciously or both that it is okay to not be extremely confident, to not do everything that you intend to do, to hold back. Because if you did not think at all that that was okay ever, you wouldn't take those actions. If you take courageous actions, the result will be confidence no matter what. The core of this is gonna always start at making it a must to be extremely confident. Okay, making it your standard that it is absolutely unacceptable to feel insecure. It is unacceptable to not approach a person you want to talk to. It's unacceptable to see a networking opportunity and brush it aside because of some dumbass excuse. Okay, and if you're into the feel-good bullshit of like, sometimes it's okay not to feel good. No, it's not okay. If you say that to yourself, then you're gonna not feel okay. And you're reading all these trauma healing quotes on Instagram that feed into that victim mentality. You're f***ing yourself over. And that's the only person that you are over. Getting into the meat and potatoes here, the first step is raising your standard. And how you do that is by first making a choice. If you experience right now insecurity or holding back or doubt or fear, whatever, then I want you to ask yourself, what is that really costing you? And I want you to expand the timeline on which you look at those consequences. What is it costing you on a year span, on a 10-year span? What has it already cost you? And what is it going to cost you? Then I want you to really dive into the question of, how does it really make me feel about myself? How does it make me think about myself when I don't take those courageous actions? When I operate from a low standard identity of confidence, as far as confidence and courage actions go. What are the consequences of that for my self-esteem? I want you to really start invoking that. I can tell you honestly, one of the reasons that I really became a very, very confident, outgoing, certain person is because I feel a tremendous amount of pain if I know I want to do something, if I feel like I need to or want to do something and I don't end up doing it. Whether that's making the call, whether that's seeing a pretty woman that I want to talk to, whether that's going up and saying a joke out loud in a full restaurant. If I feel those uncomfortable emotions, then I go into it right away as opposed to not doing it, which is what most people do, they'll hold back. But for me, I flipped that around. Instead of using that fear as a compass to get away from it and not take those actions, I use that fear and discomfort literally as a compass to move towards that instantly. If you're anywhere in any situation and you feel some slight discomfort, even if taking action wouldn't give you any benefit, you're in an elevator, right? With a couple people and you feel a little bit stifled or like you wanted to say hello, but you held it in. You feel that discomfort and then you do it immediately. Or if you're walking next to a person that slightly intimidates you for whatever reason, that's precisely the reason that you should say some shit. Just because you want to get in the habit of breaking through that discomfort and showing your brain proof that it is safe to do so. You feel discomfort and then you take an action and then you're still safe. That builds that habit, that builds the neurological connection of, okay, I just stepped into discomfort and that is safe. So you essentially get comfortable with discomfort and then you're really confident. Confidence ultimately just comes down to being very comfortable. It's not this rah-rah type of thing, right? It's just being extremely comfortable with yourself and with that particular thing, that particular scenario or setting that you're trying to be confident. As I just alluded to earlier, the way to take those actions, right? The way to push yourself to do that, but at that point you don't actually have to push yourself. The way to get pulled towards doing those actions that create that confidence is to have a higher standard for confidence, is to realize that, it is not okay to not be that confident and not take those actions. From there, you'll get so much leverage. Remember the word leverage. Your standards in a very big way give you a lot of leverage in your life. For example, we all have certain standards subconsciously in different areas of our life. If I identify as like a high-performing person, then it's gonna be below my standard to watch Netflix like 5 hours a day. I'm gonna feel so shitty about myself because that's not my identity that I'm not gonna take those actions. And if I am taking those actions, then I'm gonna feel very bad and then I'm not gonna do them anymore. Because humans were moved away from pain and towards pleasure. What instigates pain and pleasure is different for everybody, and it comes down to your identity, your beliefs, and your standards. And so if I then have that new standard of, okay, I'm a high performer, then I'm not gonna take those same actions. If you're trying to be more confident, if you develop a standard of like, hey, my standard for confidence is just higher, or you see someone be so much more confident, be so much more outgoing, be so much more decisive in those scenarios that you want to be more confident in, and you think like, damn, there's really another level that's possible, now you might raise your standard there. If there's an example of like, okay, I can do some cold calls, but there's no way that I'm gonna cold walk into a random business and pitch my stuff. And then you see someone else just pitch his stuff in an open restaurant to everybody there. Now you're thinking like, damn, I really need to raise my standard for confidence. So sometimes raising your standards, guys, also comes down to getting some examples, finding people that are doing it at a higher level. Because then you develop the belief like, oh shit, I should be doing this way more. Like what I'm doing right now is kid stuff. A great example of this is a book by 50 Cent. I actually watch a lot of 50 Cent stuff. It's called The 50th Law. He does it with Robert Greene. In there, he kind of also goes into his life story and the stuff that he's done. 50 Cent has literally been shot 9 times, right? And he still survived. Now, this guy survived death, essentially. He's not gonna be scared to like speak up in a fucking meeting, is he? It's just almost disrespectful to say to a guy like that, like, yeah, man, I'm scared to say something. There's such a big discrepancy between those standards. And so if you can think about that, like, oh, there's people that are dealing with that type of stuff, so this is like small time stuff that I'm dealing with, to raise your standard that way. It's also a way to really get your problems, like the problems that you have right now, to really put them in a different light. You've probably heard about that. You probably didn't hear about it. Putting that in perspective as far as standards and confidence go. Raise your fucking standard for what is acceptable for you, confidence-wise, courage-wise, and taking action-wise, okay? And once you do that, taking those new actions will be a lot more easy, and it will give you a lot of leverage, right? So what I told you before about, look, if I feel discomfort, right? If I feel fear to do something, it is just not acceptable for me to not then take those actions. And I will feel so shitty about myself if I then not take that action. That's really the place that you want to get to. Because once again, pain and pleasure motivate you. So you can use both to get yourself to take certain actions. The reason that identity is literally the biggest controlling force in human behavior, essentially, is because that gives you the biggest leverage. So that's why I'm telling you, my friend, to start there and start with identifying as someone who just fucking does confident actions, who is confident. It's unacceptable to be a little bitch, to be scared, and to be fearful, right? And if you are right now, that's fine, that's just your old programming, okay? But it's time to change that right now and starting with those actions. If you make that your standard, if you make that your identity, then you're gonna have a lot more leverage to take those right actions. And I'm not talking about just pushing yourself to do it. If you have that new identity, that new standard, you're gonna be pulled towards those actions instead of just having to push yourself towards doing it, because you have so much pain associated to not doing it and so much pleasure associated towards doing it. That is really the twin force that you wanna play with if you wanna cultivate any behavior. Because ultimately, people make confidence a very magical thing. They make it a very mystical thing to achieve. And I've said in a different video that I'll link to here that there's only one path to confidence. And there's a very popular video I did. The answer to that is on a continuous basis, stepping into discomfort and taking uncomfortable actions. And if you do that, you are gonna get confident, you are gonna get a lot more self-esteem, you're gonna get a lot more self-pride, because you're stepping into uncomfortable things. And I can tell you for sure, the more you don't wanna do it, the bigger the reward will be when you do it. Sometimes I'm out with friends or a buddy or a business associate or whatever it may be. The guy will see a pretty girl and they'll not wanna go say hello. It's just an uncomfortable situation. And I always tell them, and that's exactly why you should go do that right now. I'm just saying that because I know damn well that if they do it, they'll have such a dopamine rush of excitement. They'll associate so much pleasure to it. Not just that, they'll be so much more proud of themselves that I always push them to do it. And one other way that I do this with my friends who I hang out with is if it's in a situation like this, like a fun type of situation, you know, where it's a dating context or whatever. If they don't do it fast enough, I will just go do it and steal the person from them, essentially, to associate a lot of pain for them to not taking action, because they just lost out massively. And then I got something out of it. You can imagine what that would be. Now they see that visually and they're like, oh shit, I could have gotten that. They start having essentially FOMO towards not taking that action. Start associating more pleasure towards taking those actions. Start associating more pain towards not taking those actions. And it is okay to give yourself some pain, guys. Not everything has to feel good. Some people say in this psychology sphere of YouTube, like, oh yeah, you gotta come from a pure place and like you can't use leverage to get yourself going. I think that's complete bullshit, because you're gonna use leverage one way or the other. A healthy, good way to do it is to use leverage from perspective of something that is always gonna be there, which is your self-perception, which is your standards. If you're using leverage, I mean, as kind of training wheels, it's okay. But if you're using leverage as like, oh, you know, I'm gonna start taking these actions and if I don't, I'll pay you $500 or whatever, that is more external leverage. You can use that to kind of get going as training wheels. But if you're using leverage from just a perspective, a consciously chosen identity, a consciously chosen belief system, like, hey, if I don't do this, I'm gonna feel like shit about myself, and that is okay, that is what I want. You're driving on a highway. You have the little bumps in the road on the side, right? So if you go and steer off the highway, it's not like you crash into the rails that's right next to it immediately, right? That full stops you. You have first the little bumps that kind of wake you up, like, oh shit, like you don't go further than that, right? So that's kind of like the warning sign. And you want to think of your mentality the same way. When you have beliefs and standards, you want to have rules. You already have rules subconsciously of when they should be broken and when they are broken and in what matter, right? So what I mean is this, like for example, let's say that you have a standard of I want to be productive. I am a high performance individual, right? Now you have a rule of like, okay, when I procrastinate or when I watch Netflix for more than 30 minutes, that's enough, right? When I watch Netflix for more than 60 minutes, now I'm a piece of shit, just as an example. The 30 minutes is kind of like the warning sign, and the 60 minutes is the hard stop, okay? You gotta stop now. You're gonna give yourself a lot of pain at that point. You don't know this consciously, like if you ask yourself, you're gonna start coming up with it, but we all unconsciously have these rules associated to our beliefs. So it's like, I am that, and the rule for that is up until this point, it's okay, and then I'm gonna start feeling pain about myself, right? I'm gonna start hurting myself, hurting my soul psychologically, because that is not me. What we're doing on this YouTube channel and in all these videos is designing your psychology to be workable for you instead of working against you. So sometimes it's great to check in with yourself and with your standards and stuff like that, and with the rules that you have for that. What am I actually okay with? I say I'm a high performance guy, whatever. I say this stuff consciously, but what am I subconsciously actually allowing into my life? Reflect on these questions. These are deep questions. Like, get a little journal, reflect on these questions a little bit. Like, hey, who have you been the past weeks, months, years? If you look at your schedule, if you look at your bank account, if you look at all these things, what is actually your standard? Who are you really, my friend? Because all those external results are literally a reflection of who you have been and who you are up until right now. Now, those past results are absolutely not a prediction of the future. Because if you make a shift in who you are being right now, and I have plenty of videos on this channel that show you how to do that, just watch some of those other ones as well, then the future will be obviously different. Never use your past as a reference point for the future, but do use it as a data point for who you have been in the past, so that you have the awareness to make a shift towards the future to create a different reality there. You have the ability at any point in time to make a shift in your standards, in your identity, in who you believe you are, and therefore the actions you will take and the volume of actions and also the quality of those actions. Who you are creates that. Creates what you do, what you don't do, and the way in which you do it. So if you make that shift those actions, and therefore you shift those results. And those new results will feed into that paradigm of who you are trying to become and who you are coming from now, who you are being in the present. That will create that upward spiral that will create that person and reinforce that person and make it your new default. It all starts right now. More than just confidence, with what are you okay with? If you are broke right now, and I've been there, that means that your standard is that it's okay to be broke. It just is, okay? If you were not okay with that, you would not be broke, okay? If you don't have any girls to date, if you don't have any friends, you are okay with that. That is your standard. You are okay with that. If you're not healthy, if you don't have six-pack abs, then you're okay with that. So right now ask yourself, are you really okay with that? Is that really the standard you want to have? And if it is, then that's fine, but then don't feel bad about it either, right? Make a decision. And if you're like, shit man, indeed, I don't have the results that I want in my life right now, in this and this and this area, and I'm not okay with it. Ask yourself, what do you want instead? Okay, like what actual result do you want instead of the one that you currently have? And what new standard would be appropriate for that? And then take 5 minutes, take 10 minutes, take 30 minutes, take a day, and figure out what you would need to do, who you would need to be able to get and keep that new standard of wealth, of body, of fitness, of relationships, whatever. Then ask yourself, am I willing to sacrifice and do and be this person and sacrifice the old person to get this? It's a simple yes or no question. If it's no, then drop it and don't look at it again, right? Or revise it maybe in a year, 2 years, whatever, but then don't have any frustration about it. Be okay with it. You decided you're okay with being a lower level in this area of your life, right? Or for the time being, or whatever. And that's okay. We don't all have to be 10 out of 10 in every thing, right? I don't know how to cook, and I don't give a shit, okay? That's not my standard, that I have to be a great cook, right? It's just not something that is important to me. And I'm okay with that. If I wanted to be Gordon Ramsay, then I would have to give up a whole lot for that. I would have to do a whole lot of that, and I would care very little about it. So I'm not gonna do that. This sounds pretty logical because it's about cooking, but you can apply this to any other area of your life, right? If you're trying to focus on business right now and grow your wealth, okay, maybe you're not as important to you to grow your social life, your relationship. That's fine. Make the decision right now that you're gonna set that aside for the next year or two, whatever. Just make these decisions consciously, not unconsciously. Because I can tell you that your pride, your self-esteem, and your self-image is one of the biggest determiners of how far you're gonna go in your success. If you have these subconscious things that you kind of want, but you're pushing them to the side because you're not willing to do what it takes, but you haven't made that decision consciously, now that's gonna eat your self-esteem, that's gonna eat your pride, because there's a little thing in your subconscious that is always watching, that is always monitoring your actions and comparing them to your blueprint of who you are being in the moment and what you are doing in the moment. And if you haven't made the conscious decision to drop this a little bit down so that it matches your behavior, or up it and match your behavior with it, if there is a discrepancy between who you think is ideal to be and who you really want to be and what you really want to do and your reality, you're gonna have a lack of self-esteem. You're gonna have a lack of feeling good. You're gonna have a lack of fulfillment, all that stuff, okay? And that's gonna also eat your results because you don't get what you deserve in life. You get what you think you deserve. And that is such a big lesson. I would write that down on a piece of goddamn paper and stick that in your wall. Because most people think, wrongly, that they get what they deserve in life. But they just don't understand the mechanics of their psychology, that you get what you think you deserve. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday. He's a good friend of mine. So this friend is from America, right? And he's very popular. We're in Bali right now. He's coming out here for the first time. He has a lot of connections in Los Angeles, Miami, etc. High level connections, you know, very high level social life, also pretty good businessman, etc. He went to an event that, you know, I kind of set him up to go to, right? There was a big artist in one of the biggest clubs here. He was backstage and I connected him to some people, right? I personally didn't go because right now I'm in more of a working mode. He came back, obviously, and the next day we chatted about how it was for him. He was telling me the story of how he crushed it, right? And he had a very fun time socially, etc. And he was telling me these things of like, yeah, everybody really f***ed me, etc. You know what I mean? The guys, the girls, etc. And so I pretty much told him like, of course they did. Why wouldn't they? We kind of had this conversation, a little late night chat. Nothing wrong with a little late night chat between two chaps, right? We go into the fact that he was kind of telling me like, I got all this kind of validation and confirmation about that I'm a cool guy or that I'm, you know, very popular. But it was a bit strange to me, he was saying. He doesn't truly feel like he is that guy. But some of the people were like giving him that type of validation. Now, was there obviously some artificial situation that helped him, right? Because obviously if you don't have that psychology deep down, it's very hard to create that in reality. But obviously, you know, he came there through me. He got a lot of like social proof and stuff like that. He was at the best area, etc. So obviously he already had a lot of going for him, which kind of manifested that situation. But my point is, he didn't have that standard truly for himself that that's who he really is. That external evidence kind of conflicted slightly with him. And so it's subtle, but in the words that he uses, I can pick up like, okay, this guy, you know, even though he's getting a little bit of that validation, if that would be stripped away, right, he would lose that whole winner effect right away. And so my point is that he doesn't truly have that self-image of being the popular kid, right? And we chatted about this and we essentially had this conversation of like, listen, you wanna, me speaking to him, really develop a deep identity level self-image of being the popular kid, right? Of being the one with the value, of being that guy. I think that guy, that kind of encompasses what I'm trying to tell you here, but being that guy that gets people to chase him, being that guy that makes a lot of cash, right? Being that guy that is the leader, being that guy that people look to for what is cool and what's not cool, right? Being at the cause, right? Not just at the effect always of the other people, because the words he was using subtly really showed that he was still at the effect. Even though, you know, he was making friends and all of that stuff, he was still at the effect of the surroundings of the people there, right? Because he was coming from the frame of like, oh, I'm cool and I'm being funny and all that shit. And oh, look, people like me. Well, you're still coming from the frame of like, your focus point is still external, right? Oh, are they liking me? Meanwhile, it should be the other way around, right? You shouldn't even be thinking from that frame. You should be thinking from the frame of like, oh, do I like them? You know what I mean? Like, that's the question should be going on in your mind, not do they like me? That is really a different identity that you're coming from depending on the question you ask, right? And where does that question come from? The question comes from your belief system inherently, right? Your subconscious mind. And where does that come from? We're tracing it back now, right? That comes from literally 90% of it comes from the first 0 to 7 years of your life by early childhood events and programming from your parents, from your caregivers, from people around you, whatever. And so what I always say, the point I always try to make to you guys in these videos, for the guys that have been messaging me on Instagram or commenting on YouTube, I appreciate the fuck out of that, okay? It really motivates me to keep these videos going and keep putting effort into it. So if we're tracing it back, look, all that you are on a default pattern, your body essentially, right? So your feelings, your thoughts that go automatic, that is literally just programs that have been installed between 0 to 7. And so you're running these programs, but that's not really you, right? You can disassociate from that and you can observe that going on right here, and you're observing that. So if this is your body, you can observe those feelings, those thoughts, and all that stuff, and those beliefs even, and you can observe that and choose like, hey, do I want to keep this or not, right? And that's what I told him, and I told him like, listen, for you, you're gonna have to really ingrain a new self-image, a new belief system, new self-perception, a new identity, however the f you want to call this, all the same shit, that is workable for the results that you want to get here, right? And that is gonna center you to essentially get that validation from, or you don't even need validation at that point because you already know that you are, right? And that's gonna create these external results that you had yesterday, right? That he had yesterday because of the situation that I put him in, largely. That's going to create those situations more often because it's coming from you, right? You don't need any external situation to be in that place because you're going to manifest that and you're going to create that because you're already coming from that place of being. That's also going to allow you not to get f***ed with, because if someone tries to take your validation, or if something doesn't go according to plan, you're still gonna be good because you're coming from that identity already. You don't need that external confirmation and validation, okay? Now, it's still gonna give a little boost, but it's not what you're relying on fundamentally for your own sense of self-esteem and sense of groundedness, okay? And so then how do you do that, okay? How do you actually develop that new self-image and that new subconscious identity? Well, it all starts with, as I just said, raising your standard for what you need to be, right? And for what you want to be. From there, like, oh shit, it's not acceptable what I have right now. I want more, I want better, I want more confidence, I want more wealth, I want more this, whatever. Okay, raise your standard, right? And then make a plan for it. And that plan will consist of a few different things. Number one, a ritual, morning and night, where I want you to step into this identity, visualize events and experiences from your past, from your current, and from your future that haven't happened yet, that you are playing those scenarios from that place of being, right? So you're playing those scenarios like my friend, right? Like, oh, you're in a nightclub and oh, you're super confident, blah, blah, right? You're playing those scenarios. You're impressing your subconscious mind with more experiences like that. Because once again, a belief system is built through experiences. So if we overload experiences that represent the new belief system, then that will kind of like water flush over the old belief system and create a new persona, right? That's literally what's happening. You could also reimagine past experiences to recode them in your subconscious and essentially create a new belief system as well by recoding past experiences. Because your subconscious cannot tell the difference, right? You can literally go to any experience you've had and just imagine that you've acted completely different and just accept that that's your new reality. And then it'll create a new biochemistry in your body that will be linked to that experience and that memory, and that will go into your subconscious. And now you re-imprinted your mind. It's pretty crazy how that works. There's various techniques you can do to re-imprint your subconscious mind. It's the imagination, it's the affirmations, right? Auditory. It's just what's working for you, right? And I personally use a mix of this. You can use hypnosis. I'm not gonna go into that fully in depth here. I'll link to a hypnosis audio that you can listen to for free, no issue. You wanna have that ritual going on. And then secondly, what you wanna do is you wanna make a plan for what actions can you take in reality that will represent, once again, that new belief system you want, okay? So, for example, approach someone from full confidence, right? Just fake it till you make it, essentially, right? But if you have enough of those experiences, then you are it. So do it, you're taking action from a new place of being. You're shifting your place of being, then you're taking action, right? Because if you just take action from your current place of being, you're just reinforcing that because you're gonna get a shit result. right? Because you're coming from that place B. The place of being is really all that it's about. And that's why I always say, guys, be, do, have. Whereas most people actually, the majority is like have, do, be. Okay, I need to have all these things, these accolades, this blah, 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 these papers, whatever, to be able to do things that I want to do, to be able to then be who I want to be, right? And feel how I want to feel. And then there's a lot of entrepreneurs especially that are kind of like do, right? I need to do all of this shit, right? Really hustle, so that I can have this stuff so that I can finally be confident and secure or whatever, or be successful. Whereas if you shift that around and you come from a place of being where you already shit, and then you do those things naturally, and then you have the stuff, you're never gonna be reliant on anything that you have, right? And that's really a high performance place to come from. Everything can work, but that's just what I found to be the most workable for me and for my clients. That being said, my friends, let's close off this video strong. Recapping here, raise your standards, okay? Create leverage for yourself on that new standard, right? Create a sense of pride to uphold that standard and create a lot of pay to fulfill those standards if you go below it. Okay, and that's fine, you can use that. One more thing I'll mention there is use also the power of momentum, guys. So what I mean by that is like, if you go and raise your standard, don't just raise it to a billionaire, you know, on day one. Well, you're just gonna feel like shit the whole time because you're not there. You can't keep up to that standard, right? So you can build it up slightly. You can literally pretty much achieve anything as long as you take it in baby steps. Now, sometimes you can take bigger steps. When you can take a bigger step, absolutely do it. But I'm just saying, you could achieve everything if you do it in baby steps. Think about building a pyramid. Think about doing any kinds of big projects. If you just chunk it down, you can always start somewhere. I've trained a few people to get into sales and stuff. And one thing that I like about sales is, my first company was a marketing agency, right? So it's also sales, but it's just in a company format. And with these types of things, what I like about it, if you're a first-time entrepreneur, is you can always start small. You could always start at doing it at $100 a month. Now, I never did that. I started at $500 a month. That was back when I was 18. I dropped out of high school and I did that. Then I raised it to $1,000, then to $1,500 a month. And then it was about, $2K. And then obviously bigger consulting deals like 15, 20, 25, etc. And grown from there. Point is, you can always start somewhere, right? If you start at $100 a month with one client, you get good results. Okay, now you charge $250 a month. Okay, now you're going to charge $500 a month, and now you get better, right? And now you're already making full-time income. If you start have one more, that's $750 a month, right? So it's like you can always start somewhere, just like with social skills, right? Like, or confidence. Let's ask the fucking store clerk where something is, whatever, and build it up from there, and build it up from there, and build it up from there. Now, you can do that very quickly. You could do that in a day. In a day, you could be what you want to be, right? Because there's enough hours in the day. You could just build it up, right? Build it up, keep building, keep building, keep building. Same with money, right? Same with everything. You can always get there if you just start small enough. You can start bigger if you're already ready for that, but I'm just making that point. Raise your standard, get leverage on yourself, keep in momentum, and then always check in with who you believe you are on a deeper level. Because your subconscious mind, right? Your reptile brain, your emotional part of your brain, etc., will always want to go back to who you believe you are on a deeper level. If you align who you believe yourself to be with where you want to go, you'll be pulled towards that instead of just having to push yourself there. Because your subconscious mind will want you to be there because it believes that that is safe and familiar. Because what is familiar is safe to your subconscious mind. And if you make your desired reality familiar to your subconscious, once again, it will pull you towards there instead of trying to, push you away from that. Because it just wants to keep you safe. And it wants you to survive, not to be successful. So if you use those principles of your brain to essentially use it against your subconscious in a good way, then it will work for you rather than against you. That's my message for today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.